Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Kaitlyn Carlson, who's the founder and CEO of Theory Planning Partners. Kaitlyn, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn from your experiences and what you do to serve your clients. Give us a little bit of your background and your entrepreneurial journey.
Sure. So I began my career in corporate America. I initially went into asset management at a mutual fund company known as Putnam Investments and met my now husband there. And we received an opportunity to move down to New Orleans. And when we made that move, I switched from asset management into wealth management. And the reason that I did that is because while I was at Putnam, I learned what financial advisors did. And I really liked the idea of combining my passion for finance with my passion for working with families and individuals. So, I spent my first 2 years in wealth management as a wealth planning analyst, got my certified financial planning designation, accredited wealth management advisor designation, and then eventually became an advisor myself. And it was during my experience as a planner that I developed a real passion for working with business owners. I worked with over 300 clients across the Southeast during my time at UBS Financial Services. And just really loved. A lot of them were first-generation wealth, very energetic, very dynamic people, and I just fell in love with that cohort of people. So we eventually moved back up to the Boston area, and through a few iterations of partnerships, I decided to end up going out on my own to build Theory Planning Partners, and really wanted to take a very active role in holistically our careers.
Yeah. That's really neat. And, one thing that jumps out at me, and I want to clarify this because I think someone listening might go, you know what? Asset management, I can kind of envision what that would be, managing assets, financial assets. But what is asset management versus wealth management?
That's a great question. So asset management was very specific to managing investments. And whereas wealth management is very, if you're working with a CFP, which is what I am, a very holistic process. So we look at someone's entire life and over their entire lifespan. So that's going to include everything from investments to insurance to taxes to estate planning to selling a business, pretty much everything that's going on in someone's financial life. So asset management is very specific, and wealth management can be very broad and all-encompassing.
So asset management is like a bullet point up underneath the phrase wealth management, because you need to manage your assets when you're talking about wealth. But wealth management, you got to make sure that all of those pieces play well together. And if one thing is off kilter, then that could kind of have a domino effect on everything, right?
Yes, absolutely. I do kind of see it that way. Oh, well, I do absolutely see it that way, because not only do all those pieces need to fit together, but all of the professionals that are managing those pieces need to be communicating effectively.
And then do you guys in your firm have each of those professionals as part of your team to serve your clients, or do you bring in, different team members that maybe the client might have, or how does that integrate together?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I do pride myself on this. Theory is an open architecture firm. So we will bring in whoever we think is the best tax specialist or estate planner or insurance specialist for that client. We do offer asset management / investment management in-house. And so we do manage the client portfolios in-house and provide advice on other investments that the client might be looking to make. We also, our hub for everything is a financial planning software. And so if clients are looking at real estate investments, for example, or some type of private investment, then we can model out what that would look like. But anything that has to do with their personal portfolios, we'll manage that. Otherwise, we like to build the team around the client and make sure that their support is customized, and we quarterback the communication to make sure that, as you mentioned, nothing is falling through the cracks and therefore having an unforeseen domino effect.
It's kind of, speaking of dominoes, it reminds me too of when you play chess. I was watching a movie this weekend, like the old Finding Bobby Fischer, chess movie. And it's like, you make a chess move, you keep your finger on it, and it's like, okay, is this the best move? And should I? Well, what if this? And well, in your practice, when you're working with clients, it's like, what if we make this financial move? And before we make the move, we want to make sure that all of these things are working together to get them to where they need to be in their wealth plan. So yeah, seeing or hearing you say the team aspect and making sure that it's a customized team for that specific client, and you might have a different makeup of a team for one client versus another, given what they need to accomplish. So I think that's really neat to hear that you don't have a templated cookie cutter next, type of mentality.
No, not at all. And I might borrow that analogy if you don't mind.
Hey, I'm happy to help. That's awesome. Yeah, I'll send you my invoice for planning. It is neat. I really enjoy when I have conversations like this, because it's like, oh, that makes me think of, and then someone could really go deeper and go, ooh, that's a nice aha moment. And I'm sure that you mentioned when you were talking about your background, you really enjoyed working with business owners and entrepreneurs, and I know you specialize in female entrepreneurs. So talk a little bit about the importance of female entrepreneurs needing a financial plan.
Sure. So part of the reason why I decided to specialize in working with female entrepreneurs is because of those 300 clients that I worked with, and this was during my time at UBS, in which case I worked with high net worth and ultra high net worth clients. None of them were self-made women. And as a woman in my 20s, it was very disheartening for me to not see anyone that looked like me or any potential role models. They were all, for the most part, men that were in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. And so I think we're changing and evolving as a society, but still a lot of the intellectual capital and investment knowledge and planning knowledge is kept within a bit of a boys' club. And so I wanted to open up the education piece and start to educate women on how to build a company, to sell it, and the importance of female entrepreneurs having a financial plan. And this is something they can learn from my experience at UBS, is those men that were in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, a lot of them were ready to retire. They were fatigued and wanted to exit their business, and they got caught in what I call the cash flow trap, which is they were reliant on their business to support their lifestyle. And so I would often have to tell them that they would have to continue working for 5 or 7 years, because the value of their company, what they were going to net from that sale, wasn't going to be enough to support their lifestyle. And had someone like that had access to the right information earlier in their career, let's say their 30s, when they're starting this business, they could have been building personal financial independence away from the company, which would have made it a nice, smooth transition where they weren't necessarily dependent on the sale of the company to secure their retirement. So they could walk away if they wanted to, or they could learn how to optimize the value of their business and really have, as my friend says, like the longer the runway, the bigger the plane. Have a nice long runway to understand, okay, if I want to optimize this, if I want to optimize the value of this business and I want to reach this goal, then I have to do X, Y, Z. And it sounds great in theory. It's really hard to execute in actuality, because business owners just get sucked into the day-to-day, and there's really not someone coming in to tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, this is the 30,000-foot view. It's like they're dealing with fires on the ground at all times. Yeah. And being able to have a strategic partnership with someone where we can pull them out of the business and say, it's great that this is happening. We need to readjust or refocus. It's actually been hugely beneficial thus far with the clients that we're working with, because it's just something that they're likely not going to do on their own.
Yep.
And so we kind of force them to take that step back. So it's important for every business owner to have a financial plan. I just found that access to those professionals was much easier for the men that I was working with than women. I find it to be an incredibly underserved market, and the people that are serving it aren't necessarily experts either. It's still a bit of like an infantilized industry. So the more that I can do to introduce them to the right resources, the better.
And also, I've had conversations with financial professionals, and when you were mentioning that, this thought came to mind. When you think about men versus women, life expectancy comes into play, right?
Yeah.
So when you think about wealth planning, retirement planning, you may have a different, whatever you call it, but, length of time, runway, to use your word, for a male versus a female because of life expectancy. So that would also adjust how you're giving advice out. And again, getting back to the templated cookie cutter, you can't say, next, thank you, Mr. or Ms. Client, here's your plan. It's the same for everyone. No, because everyone's different, and male versus female, the life expectancy might mean that you're making different recommendations, right?
Yes, absolutely. And there are a lot of things, especially women tend to be wired with a desire to create some sort of legacy, especially if they have children. And the dynamics of all my clients have become the breadwinners, and in some cases their husbands now work within the business. This is very much not the norm for our society. So it's interesting because they're dealing with dynamics that are bucking the norm for our industry, and understanding how to navigate that, how to set up legacy assets for their children. These are all things that they really care about and want to have somebody to talk to about it. So our relationships usually go far beyond just number crunching. It's a lot of more in-depth and at times emotional conversations about a lot of things. I mean, the funny thing is your finances pretty much touch every aspect of your life. So
well, I've often said that it's almost like you're a life coach that happens to help out with some financial topics, because it's like, well, let's talk about your family and what do you envision retirement to be, and do you want to travel? Do you want to give back? And all of those things are the perfect, let's paint a picture of your perfect life down the road. And then if that's the case, then we need to make sure your financial moves today get you closer and closer and closer as you get there. So, I mean, it really is something where maybe even, do you ever find that you get a group of your clients, your female entrepreneurs together and go, let's just talk shop. What are you guys doing in your personal, professional life that's working? We're not even talking about investments and wealth building, but just, kind of like a brain trust kind of a thing.
Yes, it's funny that you say that. I just got back from a trip to Costa Rica 2 weeks ago, and 3 of my clients were on that retreat. And it was really nice to be in person and just be able to talk about the struggles and the triumphs. And these are big dreamers. And that's the thing that I love about them, is they have audacious goals and they have no hesitation that they're going to achieve those goals. And that's really inspiring to be around, because again, it was something that I never saw in the corporate world. But certainly women do embrace the community aspect, because there aren't a lot of women that are in this position yet. I really hope with our generation that changes. But women that are making 7 and 8 figures is still a pretty new phenomenon. So they certainly do embrace the opportunity for community.
Yeah. Well, and what other kind of benefits does that bring if you were able to bring that together? Isn't it true that then you look back to, you mentioned your generation. Well, think about the youngest generation coming up, looking at your generation going, wow, now I think I can do it. And you see so many of these, media stars, whether it's music or movies or things that say, I want to be that example. I struggled with this, or I want to be that example. Well, why not be an example in business as well? and go, look, maybe I can be a mentor. Maybe I can just be a motivating factor to the younger generation.
Yes, absolutely. It's funny because some of the women that I work with were really original in the online space, and it's amazing how technology has, I think, accelerated the opportunity for equality in terms of becoming your own business owner and really controlling your own destiny. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm a millennial, but with Gen Z, if there were more female entrepreneurs in Gen Z than male entrepreneurs. Because certainly a lot of women in Gen Z have social media tactics down, is what I've seen.
Yeah. And tech skills, just as a side note, it's like, okay, we've got the boomers and the Gen Zs. I wonder what the next generation, after Z, what are we going to get? Gen Y, Gen Z, and what's it going to be? Gen AA? I mean, it's just amazing what it's going to be. But, you think about the generation coming up now that their first inclination to get anything is, I want it now, I want it fast, and I can get technology and I can have it delivered quicker, faster. Oh, I need to get the information. Boom, I'm on my phone. And I'm watching a TV show, but I'm also on my phone, and it's that whole mentality of access to information. And I think that maybe one of the things that I'd like to wrap up with is, what do you say to female entrepreneurs that are coming up in that generation that have that access to information? And guess what? If the wealth building or asset management or wealth management, you can Google any of that and get 1.5 trillion, it seems like, opinions. You got to cut through that clutter. And Kaitlyn Carlson needs to say, hey, guys, let me just sit down with you and let's just stop the noise. And what do you want? And what do you want to achieve? And let's guide you in getting you there, because there's a lot of noise out there, right?
Yes, I would say now it's almost the extreme.
Yeah.
Where I was just talking to a friend of mine who is an M&A attorney yesterday, and she's helping a woman sell her company who hired a tax strategist online who is not, in fact, a tax strategist.
Ooh.
So it's very hard now in the online space or just having the internet at your fingertips to be able to tell what's legitimate and what's not. And so if I were to impart any wisdom, is look past the marketing and look for the credentials. So if you're looking for an advisor, look for someone who's a certified financial planner. If you're looking for a tax strategist, make sure that they have the correct credentials. The same thing with an attorney. It's great that there are all these options out there now, but that doesn't make up for a lack of true knowledge. And so it's now this plethora of information is almost the other extreme, where it was inaccessible and now it's overly accessible. And so do your homework and look for people that have really done the work to be good at what they're doing.
Yep. Awesome. Well, let's wrap up with what are some final thoughts that you would have, and then what's the best way that someone can reach out and connect with you and learn more about Theory Planning Partners?
Sure. So I would say the best advice that I can give is start taking action today, because if you were to start saving and investing today, it would take a lot less if you're younger than when you're older. So getting some sort of basic financial plan is a great idea. I'm always happy to help people find the right resource, whether it's Theory or someone else in my network. And people are more than welcome to reach out. And my website is theoryplanning.com. And people are also welcome to email me at Kaitlyn.Carlson@theoryplanning.com.
Awesome. Well, Kaitlyn, thanks so much for coming on today. It was a real pleasure having you on and learning from you.
Thanks, Mike. I really enjoyed this.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.